free and would like to present next Thursday. Okay, on with the show. Today's speaker is Corbin Jones. Mr. Jones was born and raised in Edwardsville. During his senior year at EHS, Corbin joined the Army as an infantryman and attended his basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. After basic, he was stationed at the 10th Mountain Division in New York for 4 years. Corbin's hobby, woodworking, became a full-time job now that he is home and studying mass communications at SIUE. I'm going to let him tell you more about his service, craft, and pastime. Take it away, Corbin. And Corbin, Musanda would like you to share your screen.
All righty. Can everyone hear me okay?
Good.
Yes.
Okay. Let me get this going here. All right. I should be up there. I think if you guys can see that. Does it look like it's sharing on your guys' end? Okay. So for starters, my name's Corbin Jones. I'd like to appreciate, everybody for having me here today. Let's see if I can, there we go. I'd like to start off by thanking all veterans, anybody in the room, if you guys have served our country or police, fire, in any capacity, I really appreciate your service. And I appreciate you having me here to speak today. The personal intro, already kind of put a little groundwork behind me already, but I was also an Eagle Scout. I spoke with some of the other Rotarians here at a Troop 1031 here in Edwardsville. And it's cool to see that we still have some people supporting scouting in Edwardsville. It's been a while since I've been a part of that, so it's good to see. I actually, when I got into scouting, I got my Eagle Scout, and that actually gave me a rank in the military. So for any of you who know scouts out there right now, if they're looking at getting into the military, that is something to think about. As she said, I spent my first 14 weeks at Fort Benning, Georgia. If you're going into the infantry, you do 14 weeks straight of one station unit training versus the regular 9 weeks that you would do for just basic training. After that, I was sent to Fort Drum with the 10th Mountain Division in upstate New York. Get a lot of snow. I really kind of missed that. Enjoyed it a lot. Very cold. It actually is colder there than it is in Alaska. So Fort Wainwright doesn't get as cold as it does at Fort Drum. Anyway, my second year at Fort Drum, I was sent to Europe to train with the British soldiers. We actually trained in Wales. We did basically a cross-training event, and then they actually came here to the U.S. and we trained them on how we do things. It was a great experience, a lot of good training in the mountains, and communication between another country like that, it really goes a long way downrange. After I got back from Europe, I changed positions to, I started off as a light infantryman, and then I changed positions to a battalion reconnaissance platoon. That's something I tried out for, ended up making it, and spent the remainder of my 2 years there. As I finished off my 4 years, because you sign up for 8, I did my first 4 years active. As I finished off my 4 years, I started looking at coming back to the Edwardsville area, and I wanted to go to SIUE. At that time, I was still pretty unsure about what I wanted to study. I was throwing around a lot of different ideas, and I got a hold of the mass communications degree, and it just really clicked. I found that I also needed a minor, so I'm minoring in business. And I'd also like to take this time, as I'm kind of going through this presentation, I want to use some of the things that I have experienced to highlight some of the situations that veterans are dealing with. And if you guys know any veterans or anyone who's getting out or transitioning, I have my contact information at the end. If they have any questions, I'd love to speak to them. I'm here to help anybody with that kind of stuff. Luckily today, there's a lot of good resources out there for veterans. It's not just getting out of the military and saying, hey, you're off on your own now. There's a lot of good resources. Towards the end, I spent almost 2 full weeks being trained by the military on how to get into the civilian sector. So that's huge, and glad I took advantage of that. 68% of veterans do not pursue a bachelor's degree, and this is something that I became very aware of as I was getting out. I knew veterans who had done their time, who had been in for, maybe 10 or 15 years, and they get out and they say, well, I'm going to go back to wherever it is they're headed, and they're going to draw unemployment. They're not going to get a degree. They're not sure about college. And though you get all that training, and though there's a lot of awareness on how to prepare veterans to get a job, sometimes they gloss over the college aspect. They think, I'm too old to go back, or I'm not going to fit in there. I don't want to go back with a bunch of 18-year-olds. And I'll be completely honest with you. I kind of had that in my head as well. And I got out when I was, like 23 or 22, I guess it was. And I got to say, I've learned so much from my fellow students at SIUE, just learning how, their path, learning where they've come from, where they're headed, and the different degrees and things going on at college. But that's a big thing. That's a big jump right there. And I don't think it's easier said than done to jump into college after being in the military, or even just having a hiatus between school, regardless of the situation. It is pretty difficult to jump back in. And I think the big part of that is veteran motivation, especially veterans who saw a lot of combat time, veterans who spent, considerable amount of time downrange. It's pretty hard to go back from that and then come back and sit at a classroom and sit in front of a computer and, take the time to get back into the way of school. It's pretty difficult, and it's difficult for anybody going back to school. Couple of the ways that I think veterans can succeed is continuing the mission. So for me, when I got out of the military, I was reading some books. I was speaking with other veterans who were on their way out and have already been out for a year or two at that time. And, the hobbies, everything changes during that time. And I wanted something to keep me going. So when I was in high school, I worked for an electrician. I worked for a plumber. I worked for a framer. I've done a lot of construction jobs. I worked for Waldbart Tree Farm for a few years, local farms in the Edwardsville area. And for me, I knew that I wanted to do something with my hands. At that time, it was a hobby, but that was woodworking. I started building a wooden guitar when I was in high school. When I came back home, that guitar was still sitting there unfinished. And I started working on that, and that got my wheels turning with woodworking even more. I started out with hand tools and built it up to what it is today. I think the entrepreneurial ventures are really a highlight for veterans, because whenever you're in a leadership position, especially as an infantryman, you get trained very well by the government on how to lead people, how to show people, hey, this is how we're going to accomplish this task. This is how we're going to get to this point, this objective. And honestly, the same thing as I was talking about earlier with scouting. It really started there. Whenever I was in scouting, it's almost like it's the rank structure is somewhat similar. Everybody has a job. And when you learn that at a young age, I think it's extremely important to take that with you as you move forward. So these entrepreneurial ventures, as many of you entrepreneurs out there probably know, you have to take everything into your own hands. You got to do the accounting. You got to run the business part. You got to answer emails, phone calls, the website, the whole deal. And though that is a lot of work, it keeps the mind going and it keeps everybody moving forward. So for veterans, I think that's extremely important at that stage in the game. And also, there's as many people probably think, especially being an infantryman, hey, you're going to get out of the military and, you don't really have a job waiting for you other than like maybe a policeman or something like that. And when I was transitioning out, I worked that summer at Waldbart Tree Farm, and this is just a little story. When I was transitioning out, I spoke with a police officer. I was, planting some trees in his backyard, and I was trying to pick his brain a little bit on what it would be like to be a police officer and if that was possibly a good path for me. And, he said to me, well, we don't necessarily hire a lot of veterans because you guys are crazy. And I just kind of looked at him and I said, I don't really understand, you know? And then it took me a while and I kind of got the idea and started getting the bigger picture. He's only aware of the veterans he's worked with, and I'm only aware of the police that I know. And, you know, it started making me think a lot harder, you know, this whole image of being a veteran, serving in combat, being downrange, you know, not all veterans are having those issues that we all talk about. Some of them are ready to come back and serve. And it's just another thing that I like to talk to people about because there's a stigma, and you know, most all veterans that I know are extremely capable people. So as I started transitioning to the Edwardsville area, like I said, I wanted to get back in. I was looking at being a police officer. I was looking at doing different things. I was working at Home Depot for a while. I actually worked at the Edwardsville Library for a while as a just keeping things moving along, building shelves, doing things like that. And that's when the side projects started turning into commissions. And those commissions started getting bigger and bigger. And there's a store in Grafton, Naughty by Nature. They sell wood. The guy that owns that place is actually a Vietnam veteran. And he helped me get the idea that, hey, if you want to do something, you can do it. So as I started helping work for him, I started taking on commissions and putting projects together and building dining tables. And that's when I formed the LLC, you know, got the business insured, got all these things put together. And that's when the business started taking off. Obviously, like I said, it started small and started doing smaller projects, turned into the bigger projects. And this picture here is a local coffee shop that I worked on most of this summer. This is an 18-foot walnut bench there. Looking ahead, one of my big goals is building my own supply chain. We have a lot of great businesses like Dexter's Tree Service, other places like that. And, you know, a lot of those logs get chipped out and cut into pieces. And it'd be awesome if I could take that and slab that and turn that into my own, you know, source of lumber. Working with contractors, I've been able to hire some local people to help me with my metalwork, help me with building and broadening the horizons of just the woodworking. And the big part of this is building sustainable furniture. So, you know, we tend to buy things from the store, they get used and maybe they get handed down. Well, it's awesome if I could do that and build things that are going to last 20 to 30 years and get moved down from generation to generation. Another aspect that I'd like to talk about for veterans is the Illinois Veterans Grant. And what this is, it's essentially another form of free money that veterans can utilize. If you leave the state of Illinois and join the military and return after your contract within, I think it's 90 days, you're eligible, and you have to have an honorable discharge. Once you get that, you can use that forever, whatever you want within the state of Illinois. And my plan is to use that to get my some sort of certificate in electrical, because a lot of the work I do involves outlets, plug-ins, light bulbs, different things like that. So if I can apply that to my business, that would be great. So I wanted to leave time at the end for questions and answers. I appreciate everybody having me today. And you can, if you want to leave a comment or ask me on the video, I appreciate it. And here's my contact information as well.
Yes, Gina, you have a comment? We can try that.
Who plans out all of this? Because there's some beautiful natural edge pieces. Who plans, like, can you do any wood? And if we found a tree, this is what we want to try.
Gina wants to know if someone here found a tree, can you plane that? Who planes that? How do you go about that?
So typically what will happen is if we have a log on the ground, depending on the type of wood, we look at the twist of the log. We want to know how long it's been on the ground. And then usually it's, you know, you have to get it cut, and then it's a year per inch to dry. So We can speed that up. We have a kiln. So what we can do is we can take that wood, cut it into slabs, sticker it, which is when you put wood between the slabs, have that air dry down to 20%, and then we can kiln dry it from there. From there, I can run it through our planer, or depending on the project, you know, take it forward from there.
So it can happen fairly quickly. I would caution anybody though, that if you see Gina nosing around your yard, be careful. Yes, Carrie.
My question is the Illinois Veterans Grant, is that still free tuition to an Illinois state school?
The Illinois Veterans Grant, is that still free tuition to an Illinois state school?
Yes, so as long as you use it within the state of Illinois, like I was looking at probably either using it at SIU or like Lewis and Clark, you're good to go there. You just have to use it within the state of Illinois, and most all accredited schools are on their list for eligibility.
Awesome. How does that differ from the GI Bill?
So the GI Bill is a federal program. The Illinois Veterans Grant is just an Illinois program. And another thing I forgot to mention, there's only one other state in the country that has a program similar to that that's open to all veterans as long as they have an honorable discharge. And there's been several veterans that I've met up with at SIUE that had no idea it existed. So that's why it's something I like to share as much as possible because, you know, it's free money for free training and education.
Cool.
My son got that.
Oh, Carrie's son got that. So, awesome. Any other questions from those on Zoom?
I got one. So tell us about how you kind of got started with your woodworking and where have you learned your skills and what's a new wood skill that you're wanting to learn?
So, like I said, I had started with just general contractors, working with them. And whenever I came back home, I had that guitar that it's just a 3-string guitar. It was nothing fancy. And when I got that back and started working on that, I started reading like fine woodworking and honestly YouTube. You know, there's a whole wealth of free information on the internet. And I know a lot of people that have learned a lot of trades and skills from YouTube. Granted, you don't get a piece of paper saying you're certified, but it can definitely get you in the door in a lot of places with just having a good baseline knowledge and showing the people that, you know how to do something. And then just a lot of trial and error and stuff like that. The thing I'm really pushing towards now is being able to just build up my own supply chain. That's really my next phase.
Kevin, I'm curious, is there a badge in Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts for woodworking?
Yeah, definitely.
I guess I thought that's where you were.
Wood carving, construction, home management, home repairs, I think.
Okay, cool.
Oh, I did have a question about the 10th Mountain Division. I lived in Colorado for years, and I know that's where the division started, where at least there was a part of it there. So tell us about your skiing or other things that within that. I mean, a lot of people don't know what that division is or, you know, what the purpose of that division is. It may have changed since what I've learned.
It started as a pine camp in the actually during World War II, and then in the 80s it became the 10th Mountain Division, like basically their headquarters, and they built the base up from there. I spent a lot of time fishing for salmon, hiking. I did Philmont, which I'm sure you're aware of. I did a lot of different things like that, and then whenever I got to the 10th Mountain Division right there in the Adirondacks, it was heaven for me. A lot of people did not enjoy it up there. They wanted to sit inside and play video games. That's not me. So I loved it.
Okay. Corbin, Gina has another question.
Last one. Okay. What are these? Can you see my screen? Where's the camera?
Right, for this, no, out front.
Oh, what do you do with those?
Those are cutting boards. Those are, they call those chaotic grain. Basically what I do is I take all my scraps. Again, this is part of being sustainable. Taking all my scrap lumber, cutting it up into strips. And then what you can do with that is glue it together, cut it again, glue it together, cut it again. You do that several times until you get enough of a grain pattern that you're happy with it. And then I've sold those to a couple of the butchers around here. You know, I can engrave them for people. Just kind of depends. But yeah, those are cutting boards there.
Cool. Well, Corbin, on behalf of the Edwardsville Rotary, I'd like to thank you for taking the time out for your presentation today. It was very informative. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. I'm glad to meet all of you, and stay safe and be healthy.
Okay, and one more thing on behalf of Home Nursery and the Tasovsky family, we have a plant to get to you in honor of Masanda. Okay, I'll get it to Masanda and he'll get it to you. So
I really appreciate that.
thank you. Okay.